Hello there, and welcome back to the Work Culture Podcast. Glad to have you tuning in with us today. I am really excited to introduce Jamila Taylor. She is the Chief People Officer of Teladoc Health, and we have lots of fun things to talk about here, from mistakes and challenges to successes. And I don't know if she'll be willing to, but she's got lots of awards and mentions in this world of HR that really tee her up to be an expert in the field. Jamila, welcome. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me. As I was telling you a little earlier, this is my inaugural podcast, so super excited to be here.
I love that. I love that we get to be the first. To give us just a high level, who are you? How did you get to where you are?
Yeah, so who am I? Jamila Taylor, as you said. So I live in the Virginia area. I have literally been in HR my entire career. So 30 plus years. Simple story, I started off in high school. It was a requirement to graduate from high school. I went to a small private girls' school. And in order to graduate, you had to do an internship in an area that you thought maybe you'd have an interest in studying in college. And my father was in HR for over 40 years at General Mills. So lifelong career in HR. And I did an internship. I started, going to work with him when I was a little girl, picking up the phone, saying, "You're fired," because that's all I thought he did. Right. And learned very quickly as I, began to grow up what HR really was, and just had an interest in it. And I think it's a great connection between people and business. So it allows me to really focus on both.
That's good. Have you ever made a phone call that was as simple as "you're fired"?
No, I thought it was that easy. But as a little girl, I used to spin around in his chair and just pick up the phone and say, "You're fired," because I thought that's what it was. But
gosh, I love the visual.
having done a lot of reductions in force and terminations over the last 30 plus years, it's not as easy as people think it is.
No, it is not. Definitely not. Well, we're going to put you in the hot seat, like I warned you. It's the same question we ask all of our guests kind of right out of the gate. What is a mistake that you've made in leadership that you feel like you'll never forget?
I think two. So early on as a leader, just becoming a leader for the first time, and then when you're a seasoned leader. So early on as a leader, I think most of us have a challenge of letting our employees just do the work the way they want to do it. Because when you make that transition from an individual contributor to a team leader, sometimes you think you may have all the answers on how to do it, and you have a certain procedural way of doing the work, and just letting employees get to the same end the vision of what you have at the end, and letting them get there the way they need to get there, the way they need to perform the work. And oftentimes you figure out that there's probably more than one way to get to your end. And your way may not always be the right way. So that's kind of early on understanding and challenges that I had. And then probably the most recent, taking different types of psychometrics as you grow in your leadership role. What I found out that I do in times of crisis or problem solving is I tend to go straight to fixing the problem and following the process, as opposed to, you can do that, but understanding where people's feelings or emotions may come into play in fixing that. I tend to think, the business doesn't really care about how we feel. They just want the problem solved and fixed. So there was an opportunity one time where we had an annual salary planning snafu, and I brought the whole HR team together, all the functional areas that were part of it. And I'm sure there were parts of the team that said, "Well, why are we on this call? We did what we were supposed to do." And one of the reasons I do that is because the more minds you have, the better solution you may come to. And more importantly, we all work together and we're one HR. And so when one portion of the team fails, all of us fail because we represent the function. And I realized shortly after the call that getting feedback, well, we did what we were supposed to do, one part of the team. I don't understand why we had to be on that call. And so there were emotions and there were feelings involved in it. People wanted to talk about what they did, what they didn't do. And how they felt. And I really went to fixing the problem in the process. So just making that space during those times to let people voice their opinions and not necessarily doing it at the after action review.
Yeah, and I think that there's other factors at play. I mean, you mentioned kind of your own wiring and how you approach that process orientation.
Yeah.
But we also sometimes forget as leaders that we've already reeled through any emotions that might be involved because already knew it was coming.
Right.
So
Yeah.
so even if we did have that emotional resonance for a time, that's long gone, right? We've deliberated about this idea.
Yeah.
We have our strategy. We have the process we're going to follow. And then we tell everybody else about it. It's the first time they've ever heard it. And that
Yeah, and
panic.
you don't give them the space to
Yeah.
process their own emotions. You've already gone through your highs and lows of, being excited, the sense of urgency, being angry, who messed up on the team, right? And
Yeah.
I think part of the challenge is, as a leader as well, you want to come to that space calm, in a calm state, because you don't want to get your team riled up. Like
Yeah.
your emergency should not become my emergencies, that saying. So my sense of having an emergency to fix it, yes. I don't want them to be running around like chickens with their heads cut off either. But again, you got to let them process, because to your point, you're right. I've already gone through all of my emotional roller coaster when I get to the meeting.
Yeah. Do you have any examples or maybe just high level advice for how to give that space to people?
Mm. I even if you don't want to address every individual on the team or the individual teams themselves, because it takes away from, fixing the problem. I think I think one way I could have solved this is acknowledging that upfront in the discussion. Hey, I understand that some of you are probably sitting on this call wondering, why am I on this call? Your viewpoint may be that you've done everything you need to do. You're frustrated now because you're having to take time out of your day to sit on this call when there's maybe no action for you. Or others, you may feel like the spotlight's on you and saying, oh my God, is she talking to me because I messed up? So I think acknowledging where people may be in their emotions and their feelings and saying, hey, I appreciate that folks may feel this way. Let's talk about what we need to do right now. And how about we powwow after the fact, and then at least allow them to know that they have the opportunity to have that discussion after the fact, that it's going to happen.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful advice. I mean, it's essentially empathy, isn't it?
Yeah.
Instead of now sitting across from the table talking at someone, you're next to them at the table. You're going through that with them,
Yeah.
even if you aren't still feeling it the way they are. You're acknowledging it. You're empathizing, taking their perspective. I think it's really strong.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now you're fairly new, 2-3 months in this
Two
this
months
new
in.
CPO role.
Yeah, 2 months in and counting.
It's not your first C-suite HR rodeo, but it's a new company. What are some of the challenges you're facing, whether that be internal, like you wish you could just kind of go nuclear and change it all, or structural, or getting integrated? What do you think are some of your main challenges you face as you're brand new to the company?
Yeah, I mean, number one, and I literally just had this conversation with myself about 6 weeks in. Um, I went in very focused on how to do things different this time around, and you take that space between your jobs to to reflect on what could I've done better in the role that I was in, and what maybe can I then translate to this. So what I really wanted to do, number one, coming into the healthcare space, back into healthcare, but in a very different space in healthcare. I was more so on the IT side before, and this is really, dealing with our clients and our members. So I spent the time, and I am still spending the time with the business, with the business unit presidents, with the leadership team, with their teams, traveling and understanding what is it that we do, right? Um, Understanding what the challenges are, understanding what the opportunities are, what's working, what's not working, and really listening to not only my team, but the leadership team, because there's been a tremendous amount of change in the last year. We have a new CEO, we have new
Oh, wow.
leadership. So there has just been churn in the
Somebody's already
business.
gone nuclear.
Yes, and so there's churn not only in people, there's churn in the organizational structure and design. People have had, good and bad experiences. There have been a tremendous number of acquisitions that have built Teladoc Health over the years. So really, what I didn't do as a leader, my biggest faux pas was listening to people's feelings,
Yeah.
listening to people where they're at and meeting them where they're at, not making judgments and holding myself back because I'm very action oriented and I like to execute. And the conversation I was having with myself is, I feel like I'm doing nothing right now in the first 6 weeks. But if you really think about it, I'm doing everything that I should be doing,
Yeah.
because building those relationships and that network and that understanding is really what's going to help me drive forward when I begin to assess and make the changes that I want to make and or assist in the areas I need to help.
That is sage advice for any new role. To not rush into that achievement mindset, feeling like I have to accomplish, I have to do.
Yes,
Like that's a quick way to erode trust with everyone you've been called in to lead. Uh,
absolutely. And I have had to continue to have that conversation with myself, because if you are action oriented, execute, fast driving, it is so hard to feel like you are doing something fruitful by just meeting people and talking to them. But
yeah,
it will pay dividends in the end.
absolutely, it will. Yeah. Gosh, already 12 minutes in, and you're just giving us all kinds of great advice. Um, let's talk. I mean, we can talk about challenges, and which we've been doing, and I think that's so it resonates with the audience. It resonates with me. But like, let's also talk about the good. What are some like big successes that you've seen? Whether it was yourself or the team that you were on, particularly as it related to culture.
Oh, wow. I mean, I'd have to, just coming new into the role, I'd probably have to think more recent, to my last role that I
Okay.
was in for 6 years. Um, I was an internal promote to the CHRO role, and the HR team was maybe 20 in 2018 when we carved
Wow.
out from PricewaterhouseCoopers. And then 6 years later, the HR team was around 300 globally. So that
Wow.
team was really an amalgamation of the legacy PwC HR folks, folks that we brought in, direct hire, direct admit hires. And then we had three acquisitions: Navigant, Dovell Technologies, and then the public sector from Grant Thornton. So what I thought was incredibly important, because as you grow that fast, what I realized is members of the team, when you're so small and you are really a close-knit family, as you grow at that accelerated pace, people lack clarity in their roles and responsibilities, where they fit in the organization. You're bringing in and hopefully upgrading the talent, from external, and then you're bringing in folks from acquisitions. And so people begin to lose sight of where they fit in the organization and do they still have a place. And so it was incredibly important for me to make sure that we celebrated what we called, quote, the legacy folks, legacy PwC, legacy Navigant acquisition people, and make sure that we recognize that they still had a place in the business. And, part of what I began to do when I was promoted into my CHRO role is this theme of one HR, and we're all together, kind of one for all for one for all. And then the other thing that I put in place was this something called a challenge coin, which comes from the military. And,
Mhm.
my husband is prior lifelong military FBI. And I created a challenge coin for the CHRO team. Everybody loves to get, rewards and money and bonuses. But I created a CHRO excellence coin, and all of them were numbered. And it was a custom coin of our brand and our logo for Guidehouse. And began to identify people in the HR team that demonstrated our RISE values and lived those behaviors, or demonstrated that in the behaviors and the impact in the organization. And then I broadened it out to the leadership team making the selection. And then I broadened it further to peer nomination. And we would recognize our folks during our quarterly all hands. And it became the aspiration for everyone in HR to achieve and acquire one of these coins. So much so that in our quarterly all hands, they want a picture with me. They got a certificate. They, put it out on their LinkedIn, and it was something that employees aspire to. Yeah. And it just really brought the team together. It brought and bridged the gap between the team and demonstrating what, the business's values, our RISE values, and how do we demonstrate that, and how do we reward the right behaviors. And the One HR theme was what I created, again, when I was promoted into the role. We created a logo. We had, it was branded. We had T-shirts, and it just became this view that you were all in it together. If somebody failed on the team, it was your responsibility as their colleague to pick them up and swoop in and to support them. So it really became, probably out of every company that I've worked at, I'm most proud of. It truly became a family on that team of 300 people globally across the world. And that's probably what I'm most proud of, is just galvanizing a team, all marching towards the same goal, same initiatives, strategy, and everybody knew where their place was.
That's really incredible. And the challenge coin thing is, as simple as it sounds, I still have mine that I got from Dell 15 years ago, 20 years. I don't even know how long ago anymore, but it wasn't tied to performance. It was tied to something more meaningful than metrics and numbers and all that. It's tied to values and integrity and that culture aspect. And I think that's what makes it so meaningful. And because you could sit there and go, just a coin, and I could probably print one on Amazon, right? But it's not just a coin. It really is meaningful. And the fact that you were doing it also speaks to that it was just one component of this environment that you were creating that really did put those values up on a pedestal compared to, the metrics and whether or not somebody showed up on time and all the other bull crap.
Yeah. And I mean, when we rolled it out, I remember, of course, we do a survey at the end of each quarterly all hands, and anonymous, if you want to be anonymous. And there was probably a couple of points of feedback where people said, it's a coin. What about a bonus? What about a monetary award? And you're always going to have those. But I think over the years, over the next 3 to 4 years, people began to see the value in that. And, it was probably one of the strongest, if not the strongest, leadership team that I had ever worked with. Just in terms of, you didn't always get along, just like you don't always get along with your family members, your brothers, sisters, whomever. But when push comes to shove, and there was something that needed to be done, it was kind of like you never hesitated. No one on the leadership team ever hesitated to swoop in and support their colleague when times were rough or we needed to deliver something. The grit and resilience of that team was amazing.
Yeah, you said something that reminded me of a debate I had not long ago with a group of people. We were talking about compensation. It was just like a whole cohort forum talking about how to compensate our employees, and these ideas of rewards came up, and they were just like, everybody just wants cash. They just want a bonus, whatever. And I actually brought up the challenge coin. I'm like, I still have a coin with a Dell logo on. I don't give it two craps about Dell, right? But I've got a coin stored in like one of my little safe places at home, but I don't have the extra $1,000 anymore that I got. Right? I remember the trip that I got to go on, where I stayed at a resort, and all the stories that came from that. I remember all the quarterly retreats that the executive team went on, but I don't remember the bonus. I didn't care about that. Like, yes, in the moment, it's great. Have some cash
Sure. Absolutely.
and do that too. But you creating this like system of rewards that they're not arbitrary. I think that's the key. They're not just like, here's the sticker, you know?
Being very thoughtful
Yeah.
and intentional, recognizing people, whether it be even on, my global TA leader did a really nice job of this in the prior company where, you're having a team meeting and either at the beginning or the end, you're simply having shout outs of
Yeah.
acknowledging your colleagues for simple things that they've done. Because at the end of the day, all of us just want to know that when we come to work and whatever it is that we're doing, and I think all of us have good intent, that it's just being recognized and it's being acknowledged in the value that and the impact that I'm having, not only with my peers, but to the business. And sometimes just a thank you is because we don't even get that many times. We just want to thank you and an acknowledgement that you see me, that you see what I'm
Yeah.
doing. And that goes a long way.
It really does. And a thank you that comes in the form of something memorable and tied back to a greater good, a purpose or a mission, um, goes a whole lot farther than like the temporal thank you. You know, here's a $50 gift card or whatever.
Yeah, you can't imagine how far a handwritten note goes nowadays.
Oh, they were that was some practice that I had at
Yeah.
Champion, my previous company. I mean, it got to the point I think I was writing one a day because we just kept growing and growing. And yeah, I would. There was this one guy, George, who took a photo. He'd gotten his third handwritten note from me in like it was like a 2 year span or something.
Yeah.
The guy is just excellent. He just kept excelling and like over and over and over again, right? And so he took a picture of the three and like sent it around the whole company. He was like, "I got my third handwritten note from
Handwritten note.
Jason."
Yeah.
I'm like, I'm me. I don't get it. Doesn't seem important at all, but it really seems important to the people who receive them.
Well, because it's easy to type an email nowadays,
Yep.
but to actually take the time, and even if it's like a personalized, logoed card with your initials, even the
Yeah.
fact that you took a moment to sit down and thought of that person and wrote out by hand a thank you, and then you actually had to put it in the mail since most of us are virtual nowadays,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or even bring it to work and walk it down the hall to someone's office.
Yeah. Thankfully, I had
That's
an
a
assistant and she did that part because I would have never done it.
Yeah, so I mean, it's a long forgotten, reward mechanism, I think.
It is. I agree. Okay. So, do you already see on the horizon opportunity to do some of these things
Oh gosh, yeah.
at
Yeah.
Teladoc?
Yeah, I mean, I'm already, even during the new manager assimilation, which was probably in my third week on the job, um, you're always walking into something and, just setting the similar to when I got promoted, you set the expectation of, really what you're going to, not the word tolerate, but what you're going to accept and not accept from behaviors and expectations so that people kind of know up front, this is how he or she operates. Um, and then, I plan to have an offsite very soon to bring the HR leadership team together this summer. I am already working on the custom coin. It'll be designed with this very similar branding and the logo of Teladoc Health. They'll be numbered as well because I always keep number one and then I begin to give out number two and beyond. We're actually looking at our values and our leadership attributes. So there may be a revamp there. So
Yeah.
I'll have to wait to see where that all falls out and what I'll tie it to, because I certainly want to tie it to the Teladoc Health values
Yeah.
and how people show up. But it should also be tied to your impact to the business. So it's a combination of that. So certainly already doing that, and then I've already communicated out, I guess my modus operandi or my motto of one HR. And we'll be having that on our signature, our email signature as well, coming up with a new one HR logo.
Wow. Very, very cool. That's awesome. Um, I feel like we have covered a lot of ground in a very short amount of time. You've given us just nugget after nugget. I'm very appreciative of all this.
No,
Um,
appreciate
before we
being here.
Yeah, before we kind of transition into the end part, are there any additional nuggets or big things that you just have come to mind that you're like, I really need to say this? Uh,
Um, yeah, one of the things that, well, a couple of things. I would say the number one thing I am most proud of in my 30 plus year career is not really the work that I've necessarily done, because, a business obviously hires you and hopefully you will deliver and you will have impact. So that's kind of a given. I would say what I'm most proud of are the lives that I've touched on my team and outside of my team, just employees. When I used to work at GE, I think it was Jack Welch or Jeff Immelt. I'll attest it to one of them. They used to say, "Who do you have in your wallet?" And back in the day, when we used to carry our wallets around and we'd have the accordion picture that you'd fold out the accordion of your pictures of your kids, your dogs, cats. That's basically what they meant. They said, who do you have in your wallet that you've impacted, you've elevated in their career, you've moved them on to their next journey, whether it be in the company you're at or another company where they're successful. And so what I am most proud of are the people that I've impacted their careers. I've given them the opportunities. I've seen something in them that they necessarily don't see in themselves, because I've had leaders do that for me. So I try to emulate that. Many times what you see in them is things that they don't want to do. So oftentimes, they curse you as they go home. Why is she making me do this? But they thank you later because there's value in that. So that is what I'm most proud of in my career. And then the other thing that I would highly recommend to people as leaders, new leaders coming into their role, and I don't mean new as a leader, just a leader to a new team, is I do these meetings called get to knows. And I've already started it in my new role. So I've given my EA the list of every global HR team member. And every week, randomly, she selects, I try to do 8 a month, 8 to 10 a month. And I have 4 set questions I ask every single team member just to get to know them personally. Because one allows me to get to know them, allows me to get to know what they want to do in their career, their aspirations, and just about them personally. But it also allows me to understand kind of thematics across the team, issues that may be a theme, and how I could possibly address it. But most importantly, I like to believe that all my leaders are great that report to me, but perhaps they're not. And it also, then I have a purview of the team. I know when opportunities arise. I know, hey, I talked to Sally and she had an interest in this. We've got an opportunity over here that it's not really about my leaders being good or bad. They also just don't have, they haven't had those conversations. And so by having those conversations, I can also put people in the positions that they've been asking for, or the opportunities, or what we call a job jar experience, working on a project to broaden their skill set or their competencies. So it just gives me the lay of the land of the broader team. And it allows me to move people around when I see those opportunities. So just getting to know them, and frankly, as a wise OD leader that I used to work with used to say, just try to meet people where they're at.
that's awesome. That's excellent. Well, this has been really fantastic. Thank you for that at the end too. I really want to know all 4 questions and maybe put them in the show notes or something, but that might be your secret sauce. We're going to just kind of end the way we always end. It's a little quick fire, this or that.
Okay.
Before we do, is there any shameless plug that you want to throw out there? Anything, or how do people find you, by the way?
How do people find me? LinkedIn is probably the best way to find me. My contact information is there. Just click on contact and you'll find my email address. And I am always open to networking and, frankly, just helping people out in their career and helping them network.
Awesome. Are you ready for the quick fire?
Sure.
All right. Start off easy. Summer or winter?
Winter.
Okay. Dogs or cats?
Dogs.
Meat or veggies?
Oh, meat. Should probably be more veggies, but meat.
Same. Fiction or nonfiction?
Oh, um, nonfiction.
Okay. Sprint or marathon?
Marathon.
Okay.
It's about the
And
journey.
what's that?
It's about the journey.
Okay. And last one, comedy or drama?
Oh,
TV, movie, etc.
comedy.
Comedy. Good.
Um,
Good. Something to unwind with. Uh,
yeah.
Jamil Taylor, fantastic interview. Thank you so much for coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you today.
Thank you for having me.
And audience, thanks for tuning in. This has been another episode of the Work Cultured Podcast. We were glad to have you today, and we will see you next time. Farewell for now.